Okay, welcome. The talk is about versioning. Versioning is a kind of boring subject because nobody actually wants to do it, but it's very, very important to especially the OSGi world because we really depend on it. I'm going to show you that versioning is actually easy but hard at the same time. So best not to do it ourselves, but let the tooling handle it, which is what I will show you. So, who am I? I'm Ferry Huberts. I'm self-employed open source guy. I've been for a very long time, and I've worked mainly on high-tech distributed systems in my career. I'm a member of the Bndtools team, of which a lot of guys are here, like Peter and Marcel and Neil. Welcome. I'm going to show you guys nothing new, but the other guys also do other stuff. Okay, so let's first explore what semantic versioning actually means. I looked it up in Webster, and I looked up the word. So semantic means something with a meaning, a strict meaning, a clearly defined meaning. Then we look at version. That's an ancient French word. That means something changes. A change is indicated by version. And you can only indicate a change if you got something that like it was before and something like it is now. So you need multiple artifacts for that. So a semantic version means a change with a strict or clearly defined meaning between like it was yesterday and like it is now. So we got that right just from the language. Now there are multiple versioning schemes, semantic versioning schemes. There's the OSGi, the white paper Peter wrote. There's semver.org by Tom Preston Werner of GitHub fame. And there's the Eclipse versioning scheme. Basically, they boil down to the same thing, with one clear difference is that the OSGi semantic versioning scheme makes a difference between providers and consumers, and they treat them differently. And you will see why this is really relevant. We will talk only of OSGi semantic versioning here, since Bndtools is an OSGi tool. What do we say for semantic versions in OSGi? We talk about saying something about compatibility. A semantic version communicates the level of compatibility from one version to the next. So keep that in mind. It's all about this. This is a semantic version. We have a major, a minor, a micro, and something that we basically ignore for semantic versioning. It's a timestamp, a build date, a whatever you want it to be. So a major change is when you break everyone, like you delete a method on your API. That's a major change. It breaks the providers, it breaks the consumers. You have to recompile everything. Minor change is you only break the providers. The consumers are backwards compatible. Here comes the compatibility. For example, I add a method on my API. My provider has to implement that method. But my consumer doesn't necessarily have to use it. So the consumer is backwards compatible, but the provider is not. Hence, a minor change. And a micro is I break no one. I do, for example, a bug fix, a code change in an internal package, internal class, whatever. Major, minor, micro are numbers. The qualifier is a string. Now, what is an API? This is very important, and it relates to provider types and consumer types. An API is a coherent set of exported classes. So I have a project here. It's a Rocket Control API. It has a package, Rocket Control API, that has a Rocket Control interface, which is a provider type because the controller of the Rocket implements that. And we have a Rocket Control listener. Some module can listen to changes in the controller, and that's a consumer type. So listeners, callbacks, notifiers, these types are typically consumer types. Keep this in mind. This is something we'll use in the demo later on. We have a version of 1.0 for the API, and the bundle also has that same version. It isn't shown, but it's also at 1.0. So I'm going to show you a live demo with Bndtools because we implemented automatic semantic versioning in Bndtools in the latest release, which you can get right now. The example. We have a provider, the Rocket controller, which is, the whole example is really trivial. It's just to show the basics of what's happening when you do baselining and change versions and change API. It imports its API because, well, it implements that API, it provides it. Then we have it publish, we have a consumer, a black box, a logger, whatever you want to call it. I called it a black box. It uses the Rocket Control Listener interface, which the Rocket controller uses to log messages and be a black box. Obviously, it also needs the API. So now we go to the demo. I have released all bundles. So we have 3 projects. We have a black box, a controller, and API, just like in the slide I showed you just before. I've released all bundles and I enabled baselining. So, as I said, it's really trivial. Here is the Rocket Control API class. It's a provider type, and I do a get and set speed. Really trivial. Then I have a, where's the other one? Rocket Control Listener. It just notifies a speed change. I have an implementation, really trivial, just generated basically. And I have a black box implementation. Okay, so here we go. Rocket Control implementer. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do something like sysout, set speed. Okay. What changes this? Anyone?
Micro.
Why? Why doesn't it break compatibility? Exactly. I changed a minor detail in a implementation, and this is not exported. So it's entirely hidden from the world, hence it's compatible. Is there impact outside the bundle?
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's lots of, you're backlinking to
For,
you're interacting with the
for versioning.
IO.
For versioning.
No.
Okay. Very well, Neil. So will we get a baselining error? Will we get a version like this is the wrong version?
Yes,
Why?
because you've not updated the version of your bundle.
But do I need to?
Well, it's not the same as what I was. So
Exactly, we changed something, so we're not at 1.0.0 anymore. We're going to be at Yeah, exactly. Ouch, we have an error. We broke the build for you because your version is wrong. Let's look here. Oh, it must be, like you said, Tim.
This is the first time that an error message has made me happy.
We're gonna make you so happy. So, okay, I do the quick fix. It changes my version, I save. Gone are the errors. So, all the versions are right again. We had to change this in one place.
Not that better, we're not sure yet.
Okay, so we go back to the rocket control implementer. And I do another thing. I do like this. Get speed, blah, blah, blah. Remove this one. What changes this? Sorry?
Same change everywhere.
Yeah, micro. So is there impact outside? No? The baselining error? Yes? Why? Who said that?
Because you've been taking a new baseline, so you still. I don't know how it works, but I presume you do a release or a baseline next time, and then any changes beyond would be.
But do I get a baseline error?
No.
Why? You said yes. So now you're changing your point of view. Oh, sorry. Okay, we don't get a baseline error. Anybody know why?
Because we've already changed the version.
Yeah, and we didn't release. So no change, because this is the same micro change. Save, no error. Excellent. So let's go to the next one. We go to the API. Okay, I'm gonna add some stuff here. Oh. What changes this? Anybody? Minor? Why?
We added method to the interface, so we break the backward compatibility.
Am I not breaking the consumers then?
No,
Why?
because they can invoke get and send speed.
The answer is actually this provider type. It's that easy. I know it's a provider type. Adding here only affects the providers. So minor, yeah. So is there impact outside of this bundle? Obviously, we're dealing with the API, so the provider is impacted. So let's save. And we get 6 errors, wow. Let's go. So we go here, we see a report that says we have to fix this. Minor change, okay, do that. Save. And we're changing the package version here. So
the package explorer so we can see that on
yep, okay. So we changed the version of the exported API. So the next error is we have to change the bundle version because the changes within the bundle are propagated up to the bundle level. So we need a minor change there as well. So let's do that. Save this one. Then obviously in the provider, we now have to implement these interfaces. So let's do that. Add them. Sorry. Save. And we're done again. So let me see where we are. We now had to change it in two places. We changed the API, which affected the provider, so we had to change both of these. Okay.
Should we also change the version of the bundle that contains the rocket control?
No. Let me see. We already did that. So, look, we already did that. And it doesn't export anything. So we already changed it from the baseline. It doesn't export anything, so we don't need this version change.
But the imports of this wasn't changed. So this one will be importing on one.
It imports a different range now. Okay. So we go back to the interface and we add another thing. Get fuel, set fuel. What changes this? It's a minor again, right? We add something to the interface. So, no baselining error. We already changed the minor version, but we do have to implement these methods. So here we go again. You get the pattern, right? Okay, next scenario. If you look at what we just did, we added this thing. At this point, we find out that we're a European company and we make stuff for NASA. NASA uses weird systems like non-metric, pounds, and here we have metric. So we discover a bad mistake. Our API is wrong. So we have to fix this thing, and NASA wants it in miles per hour. So we do that. What changes that?
Apparently cosmetic, but
Sorry?
apparently cosmetic, but major.
Why would this be a major then?
Because if I as a client used it, and I probably assume that it was kilometers per hour or something like that. So if I had read the documentation correctly the first time, so there will, if you shoot rockets with that, so you will probably end up in some catastrophic place.
Exactly. You change the semantics of the parameter, but you keep the type of the parameter the same. So this is something we cannot detect in the tooling, obviously. If you had used something like a measurement object with a unit attached, it would be no problem. You didn't have to change the API. Or if you had like something like a miles per hour object with amount and then convert it into a kilometer per hour object, we could detect the change. But we're using a primary type here. So we cannot detect it.
Once you blow the rocket.
I save it. Exactly.
And this has happened with NASA before.
Ariane 5, it's a perfect example. This is taken from Ariane 5, which blew up because of this. So we cannot detect this, unfortunately, which is the message that I want to give to you. We can do lots and lots of great stuff, but please don't stop thinking. Because this will get you into deep shit and you will have to pay like $1 billion to build a new Ariane. Okay, so we turn this around.
One second. The interesting thing here is that you can locally now also change that version of that package because you know you're making an interface backward change. So you might want to show that.
Yeah, so if you do this, then you have to manually change the stuff. So let's do that. Oh, I have to change package info. Here we go. The package version has changed. Major change. Then I have to do the bundle version change.
You should be able to do this bit.
Well, yeah, it doesn't automatically pick it up.
Apparently not. So you have to do a lot of manual stuff in that case. And you have to be really careful that you apply the new version to all the right places. We have a rebuild issue here, so it doesn't show you the impact. It's a minor bug we have.
So, question and suggestion. Couldn't you just have an annotation to the parameter to inform the tool that this is a major change? And then based on this annotation,
You could, but it's probably wiser to not do it in this way and use a more generic measurement object over there. So think about your APIs. Think about the evolution of your APIs before you define them, because your APIs will change.
I think you said, what I understood was that he said that you an annotation to mark
yes,
a method as a major change method. So you get kind of an add since, and then you would indicate.
you enforce the error.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Have to think about that.
Yeah.
Take that on board.
Yeah, definitely. That's an existing idea.
Yeah, everything.
Okay, so I reverted the change. Everyone got that one right. Who got it right? Who got it wrong? Who's too afraid to answer? David is. Okay, so please keep thinking about what you're doing. Think well of the actual change you're making, because KPH to MPH is a very small step, but it's a semantically a big difference.
That was a few $1 million for it wrong.
Billion here, billion there. Billion seems you're talking really.
That's true.
Okay, we did a lot of stuff. We added throttle. We added fuel, so we need to be able to notify these changes. What change is this? Why? Sorry? Consumer type, yeah, exactly. So it impacts who? The consumers?
It's a major.
Theoretically, it only impacts the consumers, but you add this for a reason, because you want to use it, and you use it from the provider, so it breaks like everyone. So let's save this, and we get errors. Let's fix them. We have a major change. Yeah, we knew that. That's again in the API package, which you export. So we propagate that up to the bundle level now, which is the second error. Please change this one. Ouch, the consumer is affected. So let's implement. And therefore the version of the consumer must also be updated. Anybody notice that I didn't have to update the provider? My provider was already importing this, and I'm not using it. So I could use it, and then I update the provider and its version, etc., etc.
Is the provider building against the latest workspace, or is it building against the 1.0 API release?
Let's check it out. The provider is here. So actually, I should have updated it. So we have a rebuild issue, probably. Let's clean and see if I'm right. No, I'm not right. Anyway.
Sorry, Barry. The provider's build path is using the API latest. Is that right?
Yeah?
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, so we might have an issue. So
It's not used to the workspace version.
latest.
And the consumer seems to be using the latest as well,
Mhm.
which is maybe not the best thing to do. Okay.
So this is a really trivial setup. Okay, let's go back to API. I decide I don't need these anymore because I got throttle, and depending on the throttle I get notified of the speed, so that's okay. What change? Major? But I'm only changing provider type.
But the client is going to call it.
Yeah, so deletion basically always is a major change. And there we go again.
You won't get a baseline error because you didn't release version 2 of the API.
Exactly. Ready? Okay, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, anybody want to propose a change, or do we get the message? Yeah?
Delete a method from the consumer type.
Okay,
I have no idea what's going to happen.
really?
Speed change. Delete the speed change because that was in there from the beginning. That's actually only a source issue that wouldn't break up.
We already changed the version to the next major, so all the ranges are, the versions are okay already. We already had a major.
Break it more than you already broke.
Yeah. So if you have a major change, usually in a production environment, you hold off on major changes. You like try to accumulate stuff until you really have to break the API, and then you can go bananas with changing everything because you already broke it. That's the thing I see with a lot of clients. So. That's the Java way. You add like interface 1, interface 2, interface 3, but in the OSGi world, I wouldn't do that. I would just break the interface. So the theory is the concepts of versioning are quite simple once you understand the rules, but it can be hard because there's many things that you have to change and many things that you have to keep in sync. For example, I showed you that the API is at 1.00 and the bundle is at 1.00 as well, but they don't have to be the same, and usually they are not the same. So, but you have to propagate the changes up, etc. Multiple places to change the stuff. So please let the tooling handle that. And we are, for most of the cases, except for these semantic changes that we cannot detect, like the KPH to MPH change. So never stop thinking. Contact information. You can contact the team through a lot of links and mailing lists. You can contact me on that email address. So, any questions? Wow. One at a time, yes.
The format of a range of versions. So you use square brackets and a round one to
Yep.
denote an open-ended. Why have you not used the mathematical?
This is the mathematical basically.
I use mathematicians write.
They do it like this.
No,
Well, we do it like that.
no, they use one like that. They use two right-handed square brackets.
It depends on the country.
Yeah, it depends on the country.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we verified that this was at least US way of specifying an open and closed range.
Also in Holland.
This is mathematical in me because depending on from where the textbook is, everyone has their own notation.
Okay, well, sorry.
And sometimes they are in conflict.
So this is a mathematical notation.
This is
Okay.
And
It-
the square bracket is including any
Now, this is the only right one because it's used in Holland, so. Next one, please.
How do I tell Bndtools that a bundle is released?
Let me show you that. We have a release tooling built in. So let's go here, release the bundles. We have all the bundles in the workspace here. Here we show you all the differences. We show you what's in the release repository and what the new versions are. So let's,
you can see the API changes.
yeah, you can see all the changes here.
Or you can open, if you open the package,
I think the answer is it's released if it's in a repository, which is
Yeah,
marked
which
as
I'm going to show you now.
Yeah,
I'll
and that's
release this.
into a repository.
So update and release. And we have here a view on the repositories. So we have a release repository. So I started the demo with 1.0 on everything, but now we have these versions.
And those repositories, is this a memory-based implementation of a
No, this is file backed, but it can be backed by any repository that we support. We have plugins for repositories.
Nexus, Node Central, Artifactory,
I'm sure I understood how you handle the rigorous effective version changes. So let's say that set speed takes speed instead of a lower, which would be a good idea to avoid API pH effect. Now you make an incompatible change, a major change on speed. What's the effect of that change on the API? I mean, the consumer is affected. It won't work anymore. So the detection is going to detect that and tell you that the API is backwards incompatible for the consumer perspective.
Yeah, so we basically recompile the stuff and we see that the version is incompatible with what we had, so we flag that.
So it's also the case that what you're describing would result in a user's constraint on the package import, which would, and therefore you would end up in a situation where you would only be wired by the OSGi framework to the correct version of speed for the version of the Rockets API that you were using. So you don't actually see the problem yourself because the framework enforces that through user's constraints, which BND does calculate for you. So yes, that would be a problem, but it would only be a problem if the framework didn't help you out, which it does. However, if you recompile the API against the new version of the API, you would produce a new version of the bundle, which would need a new micro version increment, and it would then have different dependencies. The user's constraint would be different, so it would wire differently at runtime, and you would end up with the client having to use the new version of the interface, which may mean that the client doesn't resolve, but what it won't do is throw horrible runtime errors.
Excellent, elaborate answer.
You showed us here the integration with Eclipse IDE. Does this also work on build times? So this can be
Yeah,
integrated in
yeah.
machines?
So basically the machinery of all of this is BND. And BND is like agnostic to the IDE. You can use it under everything. And in fact, LiveRay, Raymond Auge of LiveRay, has now incorporated BND baselining flagging, so he doesn't break their builds, but he flags the problems into their build system. And they have a huge system like with 100 developers and 1 million lines of code, and he's now educating their developers on API breaking changes. So he uses BND in their, I think it's Maven build system.
I think end.
So you're saying that when I do a Maven release, that is actually the trigger for BND to...
Now, if you use Maven, it's a bit more complicated because the BND bundle plugin cannot access the repository.
Mm-hmm.
It only does the jar.
Yeah, what's working on your
So
machine.
it cannot verify against the
Okay.
previous release. So that will.
Time is up, guys. So if you have more questions, come to us and we'll gladly explain all the stuff to you.